Hello, my name is Steph. Thank you so much for tuning into our channel today. Really do appreciate it. If you are new here, you are in for a treat for sure, because I am actually doing a trilogy, and this is the third part of the trilogy of 5 in a row. The trilogy that wasn't going to be, but is going to be right now. So for those of you that have been on this journey with me, thank you very much. And I went ahead and decided to go ahead and do a third video on 5 in a row, because I do want to come around and kind of close it out just a little bit. I don't feel like I have given the curriculum itself enough credit. And there's a few things that I do want to touch on before we wrap up our 5 in a row discussion. So here's the trilogy. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, grab a glass of whatever, and meet me back here in just a second. And let's talk a little bit of homeschool. Hi there, and thank you so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Again, my name is Steph, and I'm glad you're here. So we started using 5 in a row in January. I had the curriculum for a while, but we didn't start using it until January. And the way we use 5 in a row, we kind of use it as a supplement. But he looks at the story discs, and then he goes up and he chooses, and we find out together what the story is by going to our resource, 5 in a row. Now we are using 5 in a row second edition, and thank you, Sam James, for that question. Yes, it is the second edition that we are using, and this is recommended for ages 5 through 9. That's just the recommended ages, and mine is 6, so we are using volume 1. We have done Madeline, we have done a lot of others. You can check out the other 2 videos for the stories that we have rode, R-O-W, that we have rode. What I want to kind of focus on is what this is as far as a curriculum. This actually has a lot of curriculum to it. And when I say curriculum, I guess it has it has social studies, it has geography, it has language arts, it does touch on math, it does have art, it has just Remy has learned about France, Italy. We just got done wrapping up Grandfather's Journey. So we did a Japanese study. It is very, for culture history that Remy and I are doing, it aligns with that very well. But it can also send you on what they call these little rabbit trails. And it's one book. It gives you a lot of ideas. It gives a lot of ideas: social studies, vocabulary, language arts. It gives you a lot of ideas of what to do. It has activities in the book as well. So you have this one book, but then you pick out your story disc, and then you're led to this book. The last passage in this book is, he illustrated his first children's book published in 1972. And when I read that, Remington said, "Hey, Pop-Pop was born in 1972. And I said, "Yeah, he was." And he said, "What was it like in the 70s? Well, okay, here we go. We're off and we are rowing this book. So we looked up things, that occurred in the 70s, and he's like, "What is that? What is this? That was y'all's TV?" I mean, he just got kind of a kick out of the 70s, which then led us a little bit to the 80s, right? Then the next day we read the book, and I went over the art, the illustration in it, because he actually thought that this was a picture, that this, had been taken and placed in the book. And I said, no, babe. I said, he drew this stuff, and pointed out the shadows and pointed out the things that were illustrated. Isn't that gorgeous? Just gorgeous. So then that opened up what else is illustrated. So we learned a little bit about contour. We learned a little bit about making shadows. And it just was wonderful. Well, then, we go into, we touch on World War II. Now he's 6. So I'm not going to give him a lot of history, but what I try to do is give him history through a child's eyes. So we do have DK, and if you're new, I love DK books. And if you have watched me before, I just get giddy when I get a DK book. Anyway, so we do a child through time, and this kind of gave us a child's perspective. We also got to use the history year by year, which touched on World War II. And I think that was just enough information for him. But what I want to say really is that 5 in a row, less is more. He retains this stuff. Worksheets, whatever, that's going to be busy work. But this, he can still tell you hello and goodbye in French. He can still tell you, he could build the Eiffel Tower. He could tell you things about France, and we learned that back in January. He can tell you about Italy. He can tell you now about Japan. It has just been an amazing journey to go on with our 6-year-old. It has been amazing. So I think that's what I missed in the last videos that I did. I didn't really give the less is more type, review of 5 in a row, because that's really what it is. And it is about learning through play, and learning through him guiding, right? He's guiding which direction we're going to go. And I love that. 5 in a row deserved a little bit more time than what I had previously given it. This is a wonderful curriculum, and it's also a wonderful curriculum to open up dialogue and open up discussion. And I know that there are a lot of curriculums out there that do that. Bookshark is one of them, but we haven't really read anything that got into history like we have with Grandfather's Journey. And I'm going to read a passage here. And the picture right here. And when I asked him what he saw here, he said, bunch of men sitting on the porch or standing on the porch. And I said, yeah, bunch of men standing on the porch. I said, what else do you see? And he said, I see a policeman and a doctor. And I guess he thought this guy right here was the doctor. And I said, okay. I said, well, what else do you see? And he said, some are wearing hats, some aren't. And I said, okay. And he said, some have a mustache, And so I read the passage, and it says, he met many people along the way. He shook hands with black men and white men, with yellow men and red men. And my grandson said, okay, wait, stop. And I said, okay, what's up? And he said, why would he write that? And I said, what do you mean? Why would he write that? And he said, what are black men, white men, yellow men, and red men? And I said, well, you know that, there's black men, white men, yellow men. He goes, but I don't know red men. And I said, well, that's what, you know, Native Americans were referred to as when this was written in 1972. And he said, and what about yellow? And I said, well, kind of Asian descent is what that would have been referred to in 1970s. And he said, well, why would that be a big deal? Why is their human color a big deal? And I said, well, back in the 70s, it kind of was a big deal. I said, now, not so much. I said, because you didn't even notice. And that is what we're working towards as Americans. We're working towards a more perfect union, a more perfect country. For your generation to grow up and see those men standing there as men. And for a passage that says he shook the hands of black men, white men, red men, and yellow men. And for you to go, wait, for you to question that. For you to question that with boldness with your grandmother. So 5 in a row, he is learning what used to be, and I am learning that his generation can grow up and just see a man for a man and a woman for a woman. And that is beautiful. It's beautiful. So, it is a wonderful journey to be on with him. And I started this journey because I wanted to capture what was going on in our homeschool room because of my chronic illness, because I'm sick. And for him to have something to look back on. And I hope that one day he does look back on these videos and say, I had a pretty good Mimi. So that's it. That's 5 in a row. And it's a beautiful curriculum. And if you get the chance to check it out, I highly, highly recommend it. Be good to each other. And remember to be the sunshine in someone else's day.